Good morning, Don Palayo here. Today is Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. A little early in this morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm getting getting going today. I'm usually up pretty early. I go to bed early. I do feel a little tired though. I was feeling a little tired last night, so came home and went to bed pretty early. I was thinking a little bit. I was talking to some friends about how everything is going in the United States right now, and we came out of World War II. We've been the United States benefited a lot on the back end of World War II. Not only were we pretty much the only gig in town. We were all these other countries. Europe had been pretty decimated. The Pacific had been pretty decimated. The United States was really the only place in the world where there was a lot of humming business going after World War II. Europe had to, be reconstructed and all of that, and it's just United States benefited from all of those years. The '50s were just boom years, and we've benefited for a long time from that time period. The United States kind of became the world's reserve currency. A lot of positive things happened coming out of World War II. Gradually over time, our government's made some mistakes. I think we've gotten into way too many wars that we probably shouldn't have been involved in, spent trillions and literally trillions of dollars fighting wars that we probably didn't need to fight. Um, Spent a lot of blood and treasure. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Spain. Um, I hate to always bring everything back to Spain, but Spain was a big world power back, after the discovery of the Americas and, um, in the 1500s, to the early 1600s. One of Spain's biggest problems was that they were fighting everybody. That they were fighting the French, they were fighting the English, they were fighting the Dutch, and they were always fighting these wars. And they spend a lot of their blood and treasure on wars and weaken themselves. And I think we've been doing a lot of that. Especially since 9/11. I think after 9/11, we should have just had a lot more of we needed a lot more of a surgical, precise uh, hit, really, really sought out the terrorist training camps and really just taken care of those things and not gotten so bogged down with Afghanistan and Iraq and all of that. It's really cost our country a lot. Um, I think we are starting to go into a period right now where we are getting back to a more historical norm. We've had it really good for a long time here in the United States, and now maybe our quality of life is starting to balance back out. Back before World War II, it was kind of a hard life here in the United States. Especially you'd gone into the 1930s with the Great Depression and all of that. I've heard stories of some of my family's members, living in one room homes with just a light bulb hanging down from the ceiling and just very little in terms of quality of life back then. We kind of complain about how hard things are right now, but I think we overall we're still doing pretty well compared to the way people were living here in the country 100 years ago. um I think maybe we have gotten a little soft. I think people are understandably upset about the higher cost of living that we're seeing right now. Um, I think there are some things in the works to try to fix some of that. I do worry a little bit about some of the policies that are being put into action right now. The tariffs. Most people that are finance people are not real wild about the tariff thing because it does just raise the cost of the products to the end user, so the buyers have to pay more for everything. I think the way that Trump is using the tariffs they're meant to be more temporary in nature, trying to get more U.S. production of goods. He wants to close the trade gap. We import a lot more than we export, and so he wants, some of the policies he's passing, or some of the things that he's done or our government has done, weakening the U.S. dollar. I think the U.S. dollar is being weakened, but what that does is it makes our exports cheaper for the rest of the world, and it makes imports more expensive. So costs more to bring things in, and our products, from our US made products, become more competitive. um so we're just going to have to see how this plays out. I know that Trump wants to bring more manufacturing back here to the country. I just hope that he, gives it time, because it's not going to happen overnight. He's talking about a 200% tariff on pharmaceuticals, on medications. A lot of our medications come from Asia, from China and India. And Trump's talking about passing a 200% tariff on pharmaceuticals to try to bring some of that production back home. And I just fear that it's a worthy goal to try to bring some of that production back home, but at the same time, it's like people are going to have to buy their medications. It's like we need to, it's going to take a little time to get the production up and running here in the United States for that. So we're just going to have to see how all this plays out. Trump also yesterday is discussing imposing a 50% tariff on copper being imported into the country. We have copper mines here in the United States. I think we could produce our own copper. It may be, but the price of copper jumped about 10-11% yesterday because of that. So anything that's got copper in it's going to become a little bit more expensive. I think we're just all going to have to grind for a little while. I think we're really all going to have to bear down, um, work as hard as we can, improve our skills as we can. There's a lot of things that you can do to be improving your value in the workplace to employers. Um, you learn how to use some of these digital tools like AI, especially if you're a young person. For older people, this may not apply as much, but I know computers fairly well. I think what I learned how to use is like when I was in college. It was learning Microsoft Office, Word, and Excel, PowerPoint, all of that. And so I know how to use some of those tools pretty well. AI wasn't around, so that wasn't something I had to play with. Um, it's there, and I could probably take some of my own advice and learn a little bit of that. But to be honest with you, I don't see how AI really would benefit me too much in my current job. But some the young people, especially, might be a good thing to go out and learn some of that. Just be looking for ways to improve your value and your skills. You may want to go to a community college and learn how to do some hands-on trades. Learn how to some basic carpentry or mechanic skills. Or my daughter last year was in the community college, and she's learned how to do a few things to cars. She can change brakes. She knows how to change brakes. She even changed her the um what am I talking about? The belt, the serpentine belt in her car. So she changed that on her own. And she learned how to do a few of those things over at the community college, which I was pretty impressed with her doing that. It's not something typically a girl takes on, but I was happy that she's out there trying to do some positive things that way. Um, I am really I'm really trying to just hit my weekly goals with my part-time job. I need to ask, I don't know where we finished it with our second quarter. I need to ask about that today. In terms of our bonuses, I don't know if we'll get a bonus this quarter or not. I just need to ask about that. I don't know if we hit those numbers, our targets for that. So we're trying to get our one of the big challenges that we have is that my boss is not only a financial advisor, has his own personal practice, but he is also kind of the manager of the Winston-Salem office. So he oversees all the financial advisors in our office. And a lot of times he gets pulled that way into the office, into the Winston-Salem office, stuff, and it takes away from his personal practice. And so we're trying to get some appointments on the books for him, trying to ramp up his personal practice a little bit. He's been doing this for 30 years, so I think there's also a tendency to, once you've got an established business, to just kind of coast with the existing clients that you have. Um, so we're trying to get some growth going on, as well. Um, I am feeling very tired this morning. I'm not gonna lie. I do feel a little bit tired. Um, I'm trying to get my weight down a little further. Trying to really cut down on the carbohydrates this week. I've been eating a bunch of last few weeks. I've been eating a bunch of junk carbs like crackers and things like that. I don't need to be eating, and it's been keeping my weight up a little bit. I've cut the carbs out this week, and I've already seen my weight come down a couple of pounds. Um, I have a goal to be at 225 pounds by the end of this week. For those of you that are new to the channel, a year ago, well, last July, I was about 315 pounds. I did have gastric bypass surgery in October, and so now I was 228 when I weighed this morning. So my goal is to be at 225 by the end of this week. That might be aggressive, but I'm going to try to get there. I would ultimately like to get down to around 200 pounds. I'm about 6'1", height wise, about 6'1". I'd like to get my weight down to about 200. Um, if you look at the BMI charts, I'm supposed to be like in the 180-pound range as a high, which when I came home from Spain, that's about where I was. I came home from Spain at about 188 pounds. I did a lot of walking when I was living in Spain. So, um, when I was walking probably 10 miles a day over there. It's kind of hard to do that while being back here in the United States. But uh, I looked good when I came home from Spain. I was tan. I was at a healthy weight. Everything was kind of going right for me, at least in regards to that. It's kind of funny when I came home from Spain, I looked the best that I had ever looked, but my self-esteem was still trash. I battled some self-esteem issues when I was younger, I think. I look back on it, it's like, why did I have such low self-esteem back then? It's like, I mean, I was at a healthy weight. I was tan. I looked good. It's like I was bilingual at that point. I could speak fluent Spanish and English. I was born here in the United States, but I've been living in Spain for 2 years, and so I became bilingual. I picked up on Spanish quite well when I was living there. Um, I had everything going for me, and it's like I still had low self-esteem, and it was just all tied up with girls. How girls had historically treated me. And that's stupid. That's stupid, guys. It's dumb. It's dumb to let how other people treat you impact how you feel about yourself. It's like I just think back to that, and I'm like, why did I feel so bad about myself? I really did had a very low self-esteem of had a very low opinion of myself back then. I don't know why, but it just seemed like it was just tied up with girls. How girls had really not shown me a lot of interest before, but really, when I left the United States, I was overweight. I didn't have the tan. I didn't have a whole lot going for me. So I think that it was mostly that. But when I came home from Spain, I still felt like the same person, even though I had improved myself quite a bit. Um, give yourself some, you need to first of all give yourself a reason for a higher opinion of yourself. Develop some skills, get in a healthy body weight. If you're overweight, I understand. I was 315 pounds a year ago. And I think maybe some of that self esteem is still an issue for me. Uh, what I would say is you might want to consider some options. I don't know if I could have lost all this weight, especially if you're older, if you're in your 40s and you're significantly overweight. You may seriously want to look at the possibility of getting some kind of bariatric surgery. I had the gastric bypass, which is a little bit of a harder surgery. I did that one because my dad had it done and he had real good results from it. And so I just thought that that was the reason I decided to go with that. But there is also the gastric sleeve, which is a little bit of an easier surgery from what I understand. Um, you don't lose quite as much weight with the gastric sleeve as you do with the bypass, but you still lose a significant amount of weight with the sleeve. So that may be an option. You may want to consider the your bariatric surgery. Um, all I can tell you is from my personal experience, it wasn't easy. People say, "Oh, that's the easy way out." Not really. It hasn't been that easy. When leading up to the surgery, they put you on a liquid diet for 2 weeks, and that was tough. And then you go through the surgery, and you're in the hospital. I was in the hospital overnight, and um, I was out of work for one. I stayed out of work for a week. I probably could have stayed out of work 2 weeks, but I didn't want to be out of work that long. Um, I was I had a pretty. It was pretty rough. Few weeks of recovery from that surgery. There was a period there where I was trying to get used to eating food again. They kind of ramp you back up on food. You start out with a liquid, where you're on liquids the first couple of weeks. You start adding in like applesauce type consistency foods, mashed potatoes, things like that, soft foods. And eventually you get back up to eating solid foods, but I got back to solid food, and it was still a work in progress. I was there for about a month or two. If I didn't really take my time chewing up food, I would have to vomit it back up. It wasn't fun. I have finally kind of gotten to a point where I think I have slowed down, taking my time eating food, chewing things up real thoroughly. I think that has helped in terms of the weight loss as well as digestion. Um, you do have to take vitamins the rest of your life. So there are things to consider with that, but I'll be honest with you. I'd prefer the surgery over some of these injections that people are doing. There's a lot of injections out here right now. I don't know. I worry about taking these new medications. It's like and maybe I shouldn't be, but I do. I think it's something that you would want to talk to your doctor about. Learn about all the possible side effects. Learn about possible you know negative consequences of being on these medications. I would really be asking a lot of questions before starting something like that. Um, I did lose a lot of, even though I've lost quite a bit of weight. Some of that weight was muscle mass. I know that I lost a lot of muscle mass. About 30% of my weight loss was muscle. You try to take in a lot of protein to prevent that from happening. But when you lose 100, almost 100 pounds in like 6 or 7 months, you're going to lose some muscle mass too. So that's something also to consider. I have started lifting weights a little bit here and there. I got some dumbbells here at home. I've started strengthening my arms back up a little bit, trying to rebuild some of the muscle I lost. I want to get back into a gym because I really want to work on my legs, strengthening my back, so that when I go and hike the Camino, I'm not dying. But I really do want to hike at least the one of the Camino trails in my life, the French route, the Camino Frances. So that's something I am. If you don't know what I'm talking about the Camino de Santiago. It's a famous hike in Spain that I want to go and hike later on in life. So when I retire, so it's about a 500-mile hike. So it's not an easy undertaking, but I intend to do that right after I retire. So. Um, Stay tuned. I'll probably still be doing these videos at that point, and I'll film. You know, every day I'll do a video of my experience on the Camino. But anyway, I just want people to take pride in yourself. When you go out, I see a lot of people these days that it just I don't know. This is a small thing, but I think it reflects a little bit on people's self-esteem. Is that they have a lot of these people just have tattoos all over themselves. They don't they're not dressing for success, and they're not really putting forth a lot of effort in terms of um really representing themselves the best way. I'm even guilty of this sometimes because I go to work sometimes and I'll just wear like a polo shirt or something like that. Here lately, I've been trying to wear a shirt and tie to work. Now I work in a professional environment. Depending on your job, you may or may not have to do that. If you're working like a blue collar job, you're not gonna be doing that. But just think about the message that how you're advertising yourself. Be thinking about that because people judge you on appearances. It's just the truth. So you need to take care of yourself. Try to get down to a healthy weight. I realize that can take time and effort to get that extra weight off. Think about some of the options that you have available to you. If you're really heavy, you may want to really explore bariatric surgery. It was expensive. Fortunately, my health insurance covered most of it. I will tell you that the total bill from my gastric bypass was about $100,000. My portion of that, I think I had to pay. I just had to meet my out of pocket for the year, so I think I had to pay like $1,600 or something like that to meet because I had a bunch of doctor's appointments before having the surgery. So by the time I got to the surgery, I didn't have that much left on my out of pocket. So, um, to keep that in mind. You won't be able to do that surgery without having decent health insurance. I might be looking for a way to get some decent health insurance if you're not in that position right now. Make sure your health insurance will pay for it. They'll have to get it pre-qualified anyway. They'll have to check with your insurance and get it approved before they would do the surgery anyway. But just something to think about. I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna go downstairs, make some breakfast, and get ready for my day. But you guys have a good one and stay safe out there. I do worry about a little bit. There's a lot of people struggling out here right now. I Anytime when people are struggling financially like they are right now, you're gonna see an uptick in crime. And potentially violence too. So just be aware of your surroundings, be careful out there. Anyway, this is Don Palayo checking out.